one of the main reasons for wanting to make the film was my dad's writing. So one of the things he was doing, after receiving this news, like within 24 hours, he started writing this whole history of his marriage to my mom and looking at his life and his relationship in a totally candid way in which he hadn't before. And
was he instantly sharing it with you?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what made me feel like, for me, that was the most interesting story, was this person who could have responded to this news with so much anger and betrayal and a sense of disappointment or blame, instead responded with this kind of transformation and wanting to look at himself and his relationship in a completely different way and wanting to share that. And he became so much more open, sort of emotionally and in every way. And so for me, that was what was most interesting to make a film about. So his writing began right away. And then I had asked Harry to write his, version of events. And I was going to write mine. And I had, at one point I had this fantasy we'd all publish something together, which no one was interested in except me. and then that became sort of the fact that we were all telling these stories, I think, became, for me.
Though Harry seemed to be quite acquisitive about his story and publishing his story. Was that an actual sense that this had to be stopped on your part? My
feelings are what are in the film are that I felt like this story that didn't include everyone's point of view and the impact it had on everybody, for me, wouldn't have felt fair in some way. So I felt like, in a way, my dad is the person most impacted by this story. Mm-hmm. And for it to be just told as this, kind of happy reunion story between a biological father and a daughter would omit, this huge transformation in his life, and also, a very complicated set of feelings in my life. And so that felt like I would have been uncomfortable if that was the first way it was told. Although, there are aspects of that story that are true and that, deserve to be out there, and I sort of tried to include them in the context of the film as much as possible. So I think that his story is completely legitimate, and he has the right to tell whatever story he wants. But I felt very passionately, and I was lucky that Harry was really respectful of this and participated in this version. I just felt that the first version, I wanted to be very inclusive of everyone's point of view and not leave anyone out. Just before we locked picture, I let everybody watch it alone, and I just wanted to know if they had any issues or things that they felt uncomfortable with or things they were upset about, and I just wanted to know that before we locked picture. And strangely, I think everybody, nobody had any comments. I know that Harry had some notes, and some of those we addressed and others we didn't. But in my immediate family, everybody kind of signed off on it, even though it's not the story they might have told. I think there was nothing that upset anybody, which was a huge relief. I feel like we're closer. I mean, we've always been close, but I feel like it's been a really amazing experience to get to hear strangers' responses to such personal stories. It's been a really interesting experience. I don't think any of us are particularly, people who expose our private lives all the time. And so this is it's an interesting experience because it doesn't feel like we're too exposed or too vulnerable, but it feels like people kind of know what there is to know about our family. And that's been really interesting. Mm-hmm. I've generally been a bigger fan of documentaries than I am of fictional narrative films. So for me, it was really terrifying to make my own documentary. And so I think I'm probably more influenced by the documentaries I've seen than by the work I've done in fiction myself.
Mm-hmm. Which documentaries of Plato influenced you in particular?
I'm not sure if they've directly influenced this film, but Alan King was probably my favorite documentary filmmaker. I love The Five Obstructions by Lars von Trier, which really did inspire me. At a certain point, halfway through working on this film, I saw that film, and it made me feel that at least I wasn't grappling in the dark.
I think one of the most intriguing elements to me is your role in this documentary, not just as master director and interrogator, but your actual role in the film, being seen in the film. Was that a difficult decision for you about when to include yourself?
Yeah, it was really hard because I probably didn't want to be in it at all. And I think that what I realized is my role in the film was the person discovering all this and as the daughter, but also as the filmmaker. And so to include that in the film was a big decision, to include me constructing the film was a big decision, and it wasn't necessarily an easy one to make.